Welcome to another episode of Hypermode Live. My name is Will from Hypermode, and our guest today is Adam from Neo4j. Hello, Adam.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, everyone, for watching today. Before we kind of dive in, Adam, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Adam Cowley. I am a long-term software developer from the UK. I spent 20-something years building websites, mobile applications for anybody from startups um, to global names. I joined Neo4j about 8 years ago now, just over 8 years ago, as a professional services consultant. Spent 3 or 4 years doing that, traveling across Europe, teaching people how to use Neo4j. And for the past 4 years or so, I've been working solely on GraphAcademy, which is our free online training platform.
Cool. And GraphAcademy, this is something that you've kind of built like a learning platform in-house built on, like on top of Neo4j, right? That you've worked on for a few years. I know when I was there at Neo4j, I worked on a couple of courses for this and saw the platform evolve. And I think that's been like really cool to see. And I think it's been a bit of like, would you say maybe like a bit of an experimentation or like opportunity to leverage Neo4j in-house?
Yeah, definitely. I think when when I was asked to look at GraphAcademy as a developer who was excited to work with Neo4j, but my first thought was, okay, so how can I build my way out of this problem? How can I build a solution that solves all the problems? And we had a like very static, just HTML pages generated at the time, where there was like a login form in front of it. There was a registration gate in front, and it was a big wall of text, maybe a few images, and I just thought, now is there a way that I can build a solution that helps people learn in a better way? I mean, the numbers were pretty good in terms of the completion rates, but I thought, okay, we can do better. We can provide a better experience. And one of the things I was always very aware of when I was traveling, to clients, and I was doing like 5-day boot camps where there are 2-3 days of training and then a couple of days of development, is that the training that we had was, I suppose, kind of like tailored to certain audiences. You'd always have like a very diverse range of people in the room, but you could see when you were up there, like in front of the room and you're presenting, you could tell when people's eyes started to glaze over, or like people started to check their emails. So I was always very conscious that it needs to be a fun and engaging way to learn. Otherwise, people just get bored. And I always had that in mind. And there's also the one of the things that Neo4j has as a benefit over other technologies is its visual nature. So the one thing that I could guarantee that would bring people back from their emails was if I put a graph up on screen, those circles connected by arrows, and I double click something and people see the thing expand. That's when you get like that kind of that little wow moment. So I was very conscious that we had that benefit, and I wanted to make things fun and engaging. And I think, from there, because I've been working with Neo4j for 10 or 11 years, so it would have been about 3 years before I joined the company. Instantly, I thought, okay, so how can we use this as a test bed for technologies? How can we demonstrate the benefits of Neo4j through a training platform? And I built an MVP, which is basically an Express application with our content is written in ASCII docs, so it gets rendered into HTML. So it's just an Express application that server-side rendered all of the content. And then the MVP kind of went live, and it's been in that state ever since. So
Nice. Nice. I like it. How do you, so we'll take a look at Graph Academy in a minute, but one thing that I find interesting that I want to follow up on is you said earlier that this idea of like, when you're doing these in-person sort of boot camps with maybe a customer or sometimes it's like a group of customers, that everyone has kind of a little bit different backgrounds and the course is kind of designed for a certain persona. But in an online course platform like Graph Academy, you have an opportunity to publish like lots of different courses, and there are quite a few out there. And I'm curious, like, how do you choose what course to develop next, or like how do you choose to design a course? Is it like for a specific persona, for a specific use case? Is there like a learning path that you focus on? Like, how does that all fit into it?
So there's a mix. Obviously, there's kind of external pressures in terms of what my manager tells me we should focus on next, or what other people within the company tell you to kind of focus on next. And then there's also the intuition side of it of like Gen AI is everywhere at the moment. How can we first learn about Neo4j and Gen AI, and how can we put that into a course or into a track of courses? How can we logically take people through that same step or set of steps and teach them? But really, in terms of that, the mentioned the MVP that went live as part of the MVP. I put across a set of courses. I basically just put like, okay, so what could we need at this point? Like, what would somebody need to know Neo4j? And I took all of the user behavior and like the user patterns through the website and for our documentation, like 4 years ago now. Put all that into a Neo4j database, so I could actually see the flow and where people were going to, where they were going to next. And then for anybody that's using the Neo4j documentation, that every now and then you would get a little pop up in the bottom corner, and it would say, what is your skill level? What is your job role? What is what's your level of experience with Neo4j? And then by categorizing the information on those pages, and this is like pre vectors and pre Gen AI, like for the content that's on the page, every page was had a taxonomy to it, so basically taking the meta tags and mashing all that information together. I worked out, okay, so we need the first 4 courses are, everybody needs to know these 4 things. They need to know what a node is, what a relationship is. They need to know about Cypher, our query language. They need to know how to efficiently model the data, because that's the difficult part of Neo4j. And also we need to show them how to import the data into Neo4j. From there, things kind of branch off. So, developers look at the driver documentation. They maybe look at Cypher. Data scientists would look at the algorithms and the graph data science. And yeah, from there, that kind of forms the roadmap, which is still there today, really. So you kind of see from here, we start off with those fundamentals, those first 4 courses. And then from there, we branch off into different tracks. So obviously, we've got generative AI. We've got Cypher. We've got courses for developments or for developers. And you can see, we split things out by beginner, experience, advanced, and then the learning path. So when it comes to what we want to do next, so firstly, we can use our intuition. We can use those external pressures. But also for all of the courses that are down the bottom with this clock, users can register their interest. So we also use this as a guide when we're looking at the next course. We say, what are people voting for? What people said that they want to learn next. So it's a real combination of many things. How we build the curriculum out.
That's interesting. So a lot goes into that. So you've built like learning paths essentially from observing users' behavior through the docs. You have sort of community voting essentially for prioritizing courses that are coming up, and then of course, like as new features and new technology at Neo4j is emerging, like of course you want to be able to create educational content for folks to be able to leverage those new features. So yeah, that's interesting. There's a lot goes into that. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, as we're going through today, like definitely, let us know if you have any questions that come up. I'm monitoring the chat over here. I see Daniel is joining from Toronto today. So great. Thanks for joining. Hey, folks. Yeah, and let us know like where you're joining from in the chat. That helps us make sure that the chat is working, but also it's fun to see everyone joining from all over the world. So the reason that Adam and I are kind of chatting today, or I guess the plan for what we wanted to chat about today, was I think largely based on a blog post that Adam put out that I saw a few weeks ago, kind of talking about replacing RAG-based chatbot with agents and kind of putting forth, like there's a lot of chat about the death of RAG. Is RAG still useful? And I thought this was a really good one because it's sort of a case study, right, of something that you built at GraphAcademy, leveraging like semantic search. Essentially, we'll talk about this in a bit more detail. But I liked it because it's something where we've actually seen the impact of something real that you've built and how sort of adding agentic flows, tool calling on in addition to RAG kind of improved that. But maybe before we jump into that, do you want to maybe walk us through GraphAcademy and the sort of the how the RAG-based chat fit into that, and kind of what led you to move on, or where should we go from here?
Yeah, so I can give you a quick view through GraphAcademy just to kind of set the scene. And actually, before we do that, so I will show you the kind of where we are and where we've been in terms of the the chatbot. So there are a couple of blog posts. I'll ping these out in the chat. But essentially, like everybody else around August in August 2023, when ChatGPT exploded and the whole world changed for the better, we added our own kind of implementation of a vector index to Neo4j. And my first thought was, okay, so how can I use this? How can I use this new emerging technology, this new feature that we have in our product to solve a problem that I think is interesting. So, as with everybody else, like we at this point we had probably 5 or 10 kind of inbound messages about people saying, "Oh, we can put a chatbot on your docs. We can, we can do Q&A on your docs." Like it seemed to be like a real boom, and I think like myself, like everybody else, just excited. I don't know whether I just couldn't see the wood from the trees to a certain degree, but everything kind of fell into this pattern of, okay, so people are going to want to ask questions. How can we answer that? Give them the answers to those questions, and how can we kind of best serve people? So GraphAcademy at the time was a team of 2 people. So I'm probably going to paraphrase this blog post, but yeah, at the time it's just 2 of us. Now it's a team of 3. It's going to be a team of 4 next week, which is really exciting. But really, we had intercom set up. We just couldn't manage the kind of inbound of people just asking questions. And I thought, okay, so how can we solve that problem? Okay, we can use an LLM, and this is where this kind of RAG process came into being. So back then, the only problem around LLMs was hallucinations, right? It's just making things up. And so really, what we needed to do is we needed to ground that, ground the LLM and provide it with information. And then the only way that the silver bullet at that point was, okay, so you take the take the content, you convert it into chunks, You create vectors on those chunks, and then you sit back and then wait for something magical to happen. And that's essentially what kind of happened here. So we took all of the GraphAcademy content, we split it by level 2 headings, and then used the OpenAI embeddings of ADA002 to generate a chunk for each one of those settings. And because we're a graph database company, we put that into a graph. So this is now what's kind of termed like a lexical graph in GraphRag terms. But we took the pages and then we split them out into logical a logical graph where an embedding was a property on one of those. And I mean that seemed to work well to a certain point. We could get quite far by doing prompt engineering, and we could change things. We could put things into the prompt to say, if the scenario is this, then do that. But really, everything was just like a response to a question. So when the user query comes in, you convert the maybe remove some stop words, maybe rephrase the query, convert it into an embedding, and then do the similarity search or semantic search based on the same embedding model to get the result. And that, I mean, it's fine. Like we had to do things like re-ranking. It went into production with a development API key for Cohere, which wasn't ideal. And we just thought, okay, so let's see what happens. Let's see if we can go from there. How can we? Or let's kind of see what happens. At the start, there was no memory, so there was no persistence, so everything was like a single shot to the LLM, which, because the models were or we used like chat models, they were trained to appear like they were having a conversation. Obviously, they weren't, so just kind of guessing, and we saw a lot of frustration from there. And if we I guess like the main problem was it was giving you back maybe similar content, but not necessarily relevant content. It wasn't tailoring that content for you. So there's that one. And then so the one thing I found we saved all of the history of or we ended up saving the history into a Neo4j graph. So we had like a list of all of the human and AI messages in a linked list with like a next relationship between them. And then we took a look at what people were asking, and I saw a lot of frustration there. I saw a lot of actually what I saw most was people either complaining that the sandbox instance that we created for them wasn't working, or the integrated Neo4j query window that we had for them wasn't working, or people were just taking the questions from GraphAcademy, copying and pasting them in, and then getting the answer out, and then using that as the response, which I guess is quicker than using ChatGPT, but it wasn't ideal. So yeah, so in terms of GraphAcademy itself, so going back to that idea of wanting to make things fun and engaging, what we've done with the courses is try to create this loop of, so first you learn something and then you do something, and the way you do something is through an integrated query window. So for example, the first thing you do is you learn a little bit of Cypher, so you can watch the video or you can read information about it, and then straight away you're then asked to record that information. Okay, so the challenge there is now, when was Kevin Bacon born? So we have the content on the left-hand side, and we have on the right-hand side this integrated query window. So this is using a service called Neo4j Sandbox. Now this is I mean, you must know this, Will. When was Sandbox first created?
Oh man, that was one of the first bigger projects that Ryan and I worked on after I started. I want to say like 2017, maybe
Yeah.
2018, maybe something like that.
Yeah. So it's served us well, but I would say it's probably in the nursing home by now. But so when you enroll to a course that has these hands-on challenges, in the background, a database is created for you via an API, and then it gets connected to here. And this is one of the major challenges. One of the major problems that we had was this was a flaky service, and it didn't like it's so depending on the demand. So most of the time, it's almost instant that this database gets created for you and assigned to you, but it can take up to 30 seconds or a minute. So we saw a lot of people complaining that things weren't working, and actually when you're trying to do trying to work your way through the course, it's designed in a way that you need to be able to do these things. I mean, you could do a Google search for when was Kevin Bacon born and get the answer. But really, as you go further through the course, you get deeper into the courses and you do more complex things, you can't do that. You can't do that anymore. So that's a challenge that we had that we needed to overcome. So
And so that interface on the right, so that's basically like an embedded version of Neo4j browser, which is like the query workbench for Neo4j. And I think what's important here is that those cipher queries that you're writing, like that's executing on a database that's specific to the user taking the course, like for that course. So it's not just like a shared read-only database, which would be, I guess, probably like an easier approach to implement. But like that doesn't work because you need to be able to make updates and delete things and that sort of thing. So you're actually like providing every user for every course they're taking, like with their own cloud instance, essentially.
yeah, exactly that. Yeah. And so kind of the further you get through the course, the more you do, and really the more you do, the more things could go wrong. So if I run like a delete all nodes query here, then in theory, like when you get through to the later lessons, then the database is going to, in theory, like it's going to be in an inconsistent state. So there are many things that can go wrong with these tests. There's a way to get around that. So every time there's a challenge that you need to do something, there's a reset script that runs in the background. But even just through accident or on purpose, you may kind of corrupt the database or have the database in a state that means that you can't pass a lesson, and that's a problem for us because we run a cipher statement in the background against the same database to actually work out whether the user has done what they should do or not.
How do you handle courses that are using like application code? So I know there's like a develop with JavaScript and Python that teach like how to use the Neo4j drivers and that sort of thing. Is there like a repo that the users is cloning and run locally, or how do they sort of interact with the GraphAcademy database in that context?
One of the reasons for creating that integrated kind of browser, a query window experience was that we want to remove any barrier to entry, like anything that and remove every piece of friction that means that the user won't complete the course or they won't learn what they need to. So we've experimented with a few things in terms of the in terms of how we do that. For a while, we used a service called Gitpod. They changed their licensing probably about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. So really, what we do now is we have the same the same setup, the same process in the background for creating a database. But what we do for the interactive lessons is we create a code space. So using GitHub code spaces, and trust me to choose the one that doesn't have the link in there. Maybe it's this one. There should be a big
is quite useful, I've found, for workshops. Like I've used it at a few conference workshops where, essentially you are able to spin up like a hosted development environment based on a repo, essentially, right? And so you have it's like a VS Code like environment, but all the code is running in a container somewhere on Azure with GitHub. Like it's quite handy for the workshop format.
Yeah, definitely. And it's another one where you don't necessarily have to worry about the user setup. Whether they have block ports and things like that, whether they can install things or not. Like in theory, everything should just work. I mean, obviously, it doesn't always work out that way, but in theory, that's what should happen. So if I choose this one as a better example. So here we have this opening GitHub code spaces button. So then this said create code space in this region with this container from this repository, and then from there so unfortunately with code spaces you can define environment variables where you could with Gitpod before. So there's an extra step there, but really that's good practice to get people to define a .m file and then put their configuration into that.
Gotcha. So they're like copying and pasting the connection credentials for the like Neo4j sandbox database that gets created for the course essentially into CodeSpace.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. So there should be instructions in here. So okay, so this is the sandbox that I've got created for my for my enrollment on GraphAcademy. It's this address, it's this username, and then this password.
Cool. That looks very sleek. I like it.
Yeah, thank you.
So we talked about the kind of initial like RAG-based chatbot that was sort of integrated into the course platform, and we talked about some of the challenges there, and which is essentially lack of memory, and you're able to control the context a little bit, but you're essentially just like asking questions of the chatbot. It is just a chatbot, and that was kind of the previous iteration. But then you put out this blog post, why I'm replacing my RAG-based chatbot with agents, which I think was kind of the reason we were starting to chat about this live stream. So maybe do you want to walk us through like what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. So I suppose it's I guess maybe predicated on two things. So firstly, there's a lot of hyperbole around things like everything is dead. Like you need to do things are brand new. Like the thing that you're doing 3 months ago is now obsolete and all that sort of stuff. I wanted to write a piece that addressed that and maybe added more of a pragmatic view. But also, I think looking at the chatbot that we had at the time, based on that original blog post, was looking at. So in the end, I just ended up disabling it because all people were doing is they were copying and pasting the questions in, and then they were getting the answers to the multiple choice questions, or they were complaining that the sandbox didn't work because that was kind of flaky, and it would give you pieces of information, or it would give you the information, but it wouldn't give you the information in the context that was relevant for you. So those are kind of the two things that I wanted to address. So this blog post kind of goes through it. I talk about, the I think that there's still something mad to me about the process of chunking and creating embeddings, and the the kind of like misconception that that's more work than just building a structured form of your unstructured data. And it's just kind of, it's almost like the accepted way to do things. But I could see from the usage of the chatbot that it just wasn't, that wasn't really working. And as these like the new models come out, they've got bigger context windows. They're better at kind of following instructions. You don't really need to do that anymore. So you may need to do some work in a different place in order to actually get the to get the information into the context window. But that, I think the role that the retrieval information changes, it gets pushed further down the stack, and it also gets more of a I think more of a focused, especially for smaller projects, like more of a focus on the content rather than the embeddings and converting it. So yeah,
because I think one of the challenges with chunking and just generating embeddings is that you're kind of losing the like semantics of the original document of the original content, right? And if you're just saying, oh, let's chunk every paragraph or every H2 or something, like there are some strategies, like I've heard of like semantic chunking, where you're taking the structure of the document, like if it's an article or something, like there's often a common structure there. But I think that's fundamentally what you're losing with that sort of like chunking and embedding piece, right? Which is interesting, because that the like vector search and similarity search is sometimes referred to as like semantic search, but it's semantics in vector space is what they're talking about, right? Rather than sort of the semantics of the original content, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And so as another plug, I've just last week we've soft launched a course on GraphRag with DataCamp, and the example that I use in that is I basically take the lyrics from Journey, don't Stop Believing, and then so if you've got the individual the individual lines, essentially, if you're creating a like vector embeddings, you could take each one of those individual lines and then create an embedding off of that, but you miss the context of the information around it. So if say the first chunk is she's just a small town girl living, and then the second one is living in a lonely world. Living in the lonely world is your chunk, and then you miss that you're talking about the small town girl. So then you counteract that by creating the kind of chunk over the overlap. So you say take the 500 characters before, but that's not a foolproof thing. That could be if it's like 510 characters away, that the thing is like you're going to miss that context. Whereas when you are when you take that information and then you put it into a graph, you actually have that context. So if I open up the Don't Stop Believing, so now we can see that like from that second set of lyrics, we've got a small town boy. We can see where he was born, where he's raised in South Detroit, and he took the midnight train, which was going to anywhere. And I challenge anybody that's watching to not sing along with that in their heads. But I think that this is it's a little bit tongue in cheek, but I think as an example, it's a good one, because it demonstrates that all of this context, which is hard coded into your, I want to avoid saying the word like domain, but like let's say it's within your domain. But that all gets lost, and you could say, okay, so for for knowing that this small town boy was born and raised in South Detroit, we can actually link that back to the text that originally mentioned it. So then you've not only got a concrete fact within a knowledge graph to say that the boy was born in South Detroit. Actually, it's in line 4 of the song. So you can actually you get the traceability, you get the explainability there that you wouldn't get otherwise.
Gotcha. I think I found that course that you mentioned and dropped a link to that in the chat if folks want to check that out.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Cool.
And I also dropped a link to the blog post that we're going through in the chat as well for folks who want to give that a read.
Cool. Yeah. So I think yeah, I guess like I was saying before, like it's almost embarrassing that when you go on and you search for GraphAcademy, the first thing you see is that Neo4j refused to connect, which is the error that comes in the browser. So obviously this happens quite a lot, and there are lots of posts on the forum about it. And then I've got a side-by-side example here of why can't I connect to my database? And then it gives me some generic information, which it kind of makes sense, but it doesn't help the user in that context. And the initial prompts could be updated, and you could put more information in there to say, right, if the user says about or is complaining about a connection, then you need to do this, you need to do that. But even just giving them information of check your port, check your firewall, check your credentials. Well, the credentials are provided for them anyway. Everything should be hard coded. There should be no reason why they need those unless they're doing an app development course. But actually, if with the right context, you can provide a way of the user using that information to test locally to see whether the thing is up. So instead of having just using a vector search and then just stuffing information into the prompts, which prompt stuffing is not something I've heard for a long time, but that was the kind of accepted term for what you're doing. But instead of that, you can create an agent with access to a tool to actually get the instance details. So in this case, it's using a tool called get instance credentials, so based on the conversation, and then given that information, and then also you can provide information to the LLM to say if you do get any information on a for a database and the user is in a course that is using Python, then provide a Python example, and then they can copy and paste that and run that locally to check it. But really, that tool is going to fail if the server is down. So then the next message that comes through once that tool fails is oh, it looks like the server's down. Come back in 5-10 minutes, and that avoids a lot of frustration because the user has to actually access the course to access that database to continue on through the course. And then, so I think that the additional context as well in this context is okay. So now I think I've done the thing that you've asked me to do, but when I click this validate results button or verify challenge, it comes back saying, oops, it looks like you haven't passed the test. Now that could be down to the database not being in the right state. It could be down to the user not actually doing the thing. It could be that the API isn't available. It could be like to create the database or to get the credentials. It could be that API is available but the database isn't available, or it could be any one of these things. In this context, just having this kind of information or like you haven't passed is not a nice experience. So what the agent being able to act to helps with is, okay, so given this context, this is the query that has been run. So the LLM can interpret the query and understand what the success criteria are for that lesson. Then these are the results that come back. Okay, so there needs to be there should be no person in the database with a name property of Emerald from. And then a relationship should also be deleted. But I think I put that in there just to test if there was more than one thing, and that's just stayed in there. But that's an aside. But we can actually then, because that information is passed through to an LLM, the LLM can make sense of both the success criteria and the state of the database, the results of the verification script, and say, okay, so how do I actually pass it? And then the LLM can actually help with that. And it can say, okay, so to pass this lesson, you need to execute the cipher query. And it gives you the cipher query. So in theory, you can just copy and paste that. But just by seeing that information again and then reading it, that should be enough, if not to commit it into memory forever, but it could just be just enough to make you familiar enough with the concepts. So everything is a learning opportunity. It's a teaching moment. But we shouldn't be so strict that that we need people to do these very specific things in order for us to be able to tick a box to say that they've learned.
So the I guess like big innovation here, the improvement in the chatbot, is that by adding this concept of tools and tool calling, so you're essentially giving the model the ability to like understand and act on its environments by in response to a user message choosing to invoke these tools rather than just like pulling data from the context or from the data that the model was trained on. And so by adding these tools, you're able to have like a much more useful and interactive experience for like the person going through the course, essentially, because it's able to understand like the context of what course the user is taking, like your Python example. So you're getting Python code, fetching like the database credentials for the user, which seems like a much better experience. Kind of like the equivalent of having like an instructor that you can flag down in an in-person workshop or something like that, right? We may have lost Adam for a moment. Cool. Looks like we lost Adam. Let me add him back here. Welcome back to the stream.
Thank you. I'm surprised it's taken that long. So there's a problem with the streaming platform that I've had previously, and I think it took about 20 minutes in the last one that I did. I need to remember for next time. Yeah, I mean, we could say, for example, okay, so I mean, this is the exact same thing. Why haven't I passed? So then uses the verify challenge tool. So it's got the context of the lesson I'm on at the moment. So it's Cypher fundamentals, 2 writing, 10C delete. And then the output that it gives me is that the lesson hasn't been completed. The reasons are that these are the criteria that I need to make to do, and then it gives me information on how to complete it. So if I say but my database won't connect, it should then go through and inspect so it gets the database credentials, and then gives me some information. And then so that there's a little Easter egg in there that I put in based on the way that I saw people using it before. And I'm going to try and trigger this now. But there are instructions there to say that if the user is really frustrated and they've already demonstrated what they that they know what they're doing, and you've gone through these steps, then it will complete it for you. Let's see if I can get it. So it can run a write statement through that run cipher tool, but I can ask it information about the database itself, and it uses that run cipher tool to do it. But there is a certain scenario where you can tweak it and get it to do it, but it looks like it's not doing it. Maybe if I do, I tried running this and it didn't work. Now I'm frustrated and I'm going to use another database. So in theory, that should be then demonstrating what was there. Oh, that's not. No, that's not. Okay, anyway, that should happen, but it doesn't.
Which makes sense, because that's kind of, again, going back to like the, in classroom workshop experience. Like if you're having some issue with like the platform or the system, or like you're stuck for some other reason other than like you didn't learn the material, then yeah, the instructor's gonna say, okay, sure, like let's move on. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I've now run the query to delete it, and now it can inspect the database again, and then okay, it's worked out. I can do it. So that's a really nice way to go about it, and it's like a guided way. But the thing that I like the most about this is that none of this, like this verify challenge, the run cipher tool, the reset database tool, they're not new things that I've written for the chatbot. Like specifically, they are pieces of code. There are functions inside the code base already that I can just add another interface on top of. So I can guide the user through through a personalized experience, and then I can also give them access to the same functionality but through a chat interface instead.
Can you talk a little bit about how this agent is built? Like, is this using an agent framework? Are you looking at like MCP to expose these tools? Can you talk maybe a bit about like the architecture of the agent?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I can switch over to some code and show you some code. So the agent itself is built with LangChain and LangGraph. So it's the pre-built create React agent from LangGraph, with some little pieces kind of sprinkled in on top. So when the way that I've decided to architect the agent is to give it a new memory, or sorry, a new conversation ID for each user for each page that they're on. So if anybody goes to a ask for a question on a module or on a lesson page, then I basically call the same function, generate a conversation ID, which is just a hash of the user and then the path. So then the user can have a different conversation per lesson, and then that gives them the ability to go back and check again. And then I just create this invoke method, which then is where the information gets kind of sent through. So we have a post request. So again, this is all Express.
I think we may have lost Adam again for a moment. Hopefully he comes back soon. While we're waiting for Adam to come back, we're maybe 10 minutes or so left. So if folks have any questions, like please drop those in the chat, and we'll be sure to get to those when Adam's internet picks up again. And the one question I want to ask Adam, so I don't forget here, is whether or not this agent has a way to solve that problem of just answering the user questions. If the user just types in like what is the answer? There we go. Welcome back again.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm switching browser this time to see if that helps.
I was just letting folks know that we're running a little up on time here, of maybe 10 minutes or so left. So just a reminder to folks, if they have questions, to drop those in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just getting to this interesting part as well. Just as it quits out. So that's a little bit of suspense for you there.
I like that. And we lost Adam again. And there he is.
All right, third time lucky. I'm feeling confident this time.
And code is back. There we go.
Here we go. Perfect. Is that big enough for you? Do you need that?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, that's better.
Cool. Okay, so we have this this invoke method, which takes information about the user, what they're doing currently on the where they are on the site at the moment, the message that they've sent, and then some the request parameters and things like that. And then that goes through to the invoke method, which is in here. So I have some to do. I need to add more slash commands, but if the input the user is put in is clear, then it doesn't have to go to an LLM for that. It will just send the response back. But we so this create chatbot agent function, which basically creates the agent, like a singleton of the agent for that instance at that time. With the an LLM, so I'm using OpenAI, the GPT-4o. A check pointer, which is a Neo4j version of the check pointer. So all of the information, rather than being saved in memory or going into some kind of in-memory database, which is or like an in-memory store, which I see quite a lot in the examples. Everything goes into Neo4j. So we've got a track of all of the messages that all gets persisted and then loaded up the next time that the user uses the same conversation ID.
And how is that represented in the graph? Is that essentially like a graph of chat messages?
Yeah, so it LangChain splits it down into a hierarchy of so for each conversation there are checkpoints, and then the checkpoints have rights to them. So a checkpoint right could be this is an agent an AI message which is deciding to use tools. It could be a system message. It could be or like a combination of those. Because you can have this scenario of like having the human in the loop where you ask for some sort of verification before you run a tool or something like that. So obviously we don't have that in GraphAcademy, but it's useful to have that. So that is all information that's useful for LangChain itself. But for my purposes, the only thing that is useful is that we have this conversation with a set of messages in there. So a message could be a human message, or it could be an AI message. The AI message may have tool calls, so that's a relationship to a node of label tool with the arguments defined on there, and then that all gets hydrated back into the UI when it creates the or when it loads the information in. When you reload the page, it will have that information there. So really this is an easy, I suppose, like an easy way to invoke this. So everything is all kind of singletons. And And then we get the context. So the context is a system message, which basically has information about the user, what they're doing, where they are. So, you're speaking to Adam, his user ID is this. That's useful because some of the tools require a user ID. They're visiting this page. These are the request parameters. And then we can build up some information to personalize the call, the actual call. So, they're enrolled to this course. They have or haven't completed it. They're on this module. They're on this lesson. That gives you all that information. Maybe the course is using the recommendations use case. So we can have that there, and then there can be some specific instructions about what information is contained, or describe the schema for this database. And then, so the next lesson is this. So if they do complete something, then we can give them a link to the next one, and that's all just built up into a system message. So we have that, and then we have the user's input, and then just kind of magically the check pointer will go away and get the conversation history, and it will prepend that. So the chatbot has the full context of what the history is, and then we stream out the response. So for every event that happens in the stream, it then works out what that thing is, and then returns it to the to the UI. So all of the responses are streamed back to the client, and I think this is something I struggle with quite a lot. I ended up vibe coding a solution, purely because you can use WebSockets to get the information, but obviously there's an overhead to that, and there's all sorts of problems around DDoS and authentication, all that kind of thing. So the easiest way to do it is to do streamed events back from the API using HTTP. Now, when you use server-sent events, which is the kind of the default way to do that, the only way you can trigger that is with a get message. A get request to the API. Now, to me, that didn't really sit well. That all these things were created on a get request, and I would rather, I suppose, rather write my own logic for it. So where I've got this send SSC event, and I've got at the top, I've got this set up the response. You need to do some really specific things in order to get that information back. But the benefit to that is when the agent is calling a tool, you can display that on the screen, and then when the tool finishes, you can display the response. And you can handle all these things in the UI. So there's a few things you need to do to actually set up the response. So define the content type as an event stream. Make sure there's no cache on there. Keep the connection alive. The encoding is chunked, and then most importantly, you have to flush the headers so the front end knows that you're getting these responses in sequence. And then for actually handling the message, if there's a tool call that's happening inside a message, then, or if a tool call has been requested, then we send a tool start event to the UI with the information about it, and then when that tool call is finished, then there's a tool end rather than tool start. For the AI messages, it just sends the response back and starts to stream that back. And the way that it's all split out is that the UI expects a 2-line response. The first one is the event. So the event could be tool start, could be tool end. It could be anything that you want, really. It's just a way of getting the UI to handle that response. And then it sends the response back. So if it's a string, so for example, like either the human message or an AI message, then it will just send back the appended version of that response, so you can get the stream result kind of token by token, line by line. Or if in the example of like a tool call, the information that you want, or the information that gets sent back is that the agent is sending this, or is calling this tool with these parameters, and then when it comes back, there could be a string response, or it could be a JSON response, but it just encodes it as JSON and then gets that back, and that is handled then by the front end in order to actually display things as they go, and that's really the magic. So if I jump back over to the actual agent, and then I actually give you a display of this. So how many nodes are there in? So you don't have to fix.
That is one thing I like about agent chats, is that you can be very terse and don't need to worry about spellings. Models are very, very good at figuring out what you mean.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So you can see that. So we've had that event of tool start. So it's this ID is giving me that it's running the run cipher tool, and it gives me the information that I need to create that input block. And then I don't know why this hasn't. It looks fine. Again, and then so it's once it's done the thing that it needs to, it then gives you the response back from the AI, which is these are the individual chunks, and it seems like the response is quick enough that it adds everything at the same time rather than it doing it kind of like line by line. I don't know whether the tools like ChatGPT simulate the word by word thing just to make it seem more magical. But yeah, we'll see. So what are my DB credits? Okay, so it's already got it in the context of the conversation. But essentially, it's just a build up of these events. That's all handled by the UI until it gets to this end event, which means that the streaming is finished, and then display these buttons. But yeah, the thing that I really like about this approach is that I can just add a different interface on top of the code that I already have. So I've got a tools folder in here which has all of the access to all of the tools that I have. So for example, if I'm getting the instance credentials, so that's one of the tools we run already. So that information's already there. It's all in the configurable of the LangChain agent, and the invocation of that, the information is passed through to that invoke method. So I can just return that information. So I don't have to do anything else there because that information is already loaded within the session. If I want to, for example, get the verify the challenge, so I've got a schema there that I define, which is I need the course, the module, and the lesson, and then all I do is I then just call a function that already exists within my code base, and then interpret the results. So if there isn't a result, then there's probably no enrollment. Let's handle that condition. These are the reasons. If the course is completed, you've already completed the course. Congratulations. If you've only if you completed the lesson itself, then you give an extra response back. So it can give you it will give you the information on whether the what needs to be done, or just gives you like a congratulations message. But that information's already it's already there. That the function's already there. It's just something else I can put on there. Another one that I added was the provide feedback tool. So if people are complaining to the to the chatbot, to the agent, that things aren't working, I want to be able to capture that information and then put it somewhere else. So any keen viewers would have seen at the bottom of the page on the course, there's like a little feedback widget, which is something that anybody inside anybody with a Neo4j account can see. So we collect feedback for everything. So there's a feedback widget where you can say whether it's helpful or unhelpful. That's another thing we do. When we're looking at our next job that needs to be done, do we create a new course or do we maintain and improve the information that we've got? So that is, we have dashboards for that. We have internally, there's like an SLA for what those feedback scores should be, and then obviously we filter out the sandbox things, then we go from there. But if somebody's complaining to the chatbot, that's just their preferred way of communication. So as long as the chatbot can decipher whether true or false was did they find this this lesson helpful? What was the reason for it, and was it what are the additional information? As long as all that information is available, then the agent has the ability to call this tool with a reason, with the additional information, and then again just use a function that already exists on the website within the code to actually log that feedback, and then that means we can get that in the right place at the right time, and we can action it from there. So yeah, it's just the LLM is able to act, and it becomes like an interface on top of the content that we already have there. So that's where we are at the moment. I've got so many plans on what we can do to add more information, but I think more importantly, just looking at the feedback to what happened to the conversations, what was good, what was bad, those kind of up and down thumbs, and then the information that the user gives. That is all then used to work out where there are deficiencies in the chatbot, and then improve it in the future. So can we add a new tool that allows the user to do something, or can we add a feature that makes users' lives easier because they're struggling with something? Or one of the things that we've added to we have a course on MCP. One of the things we've added there is like a summarize tool. So you can use the summarization of the course content and then ask questions of it. So like, the example that I posted up on LinkedIn was, give me tell me how MCP could be used in the context of Bluey, because I had the Bluey theme tune going on in my head because that had been on in the morning. But it gave me the dad is the dad is a server, and he has tools, and then that can interact with the other tools via it was the explanation was fine. But if you think of that in terms of like a real world scenario within an industry, like how can I use this in manufacturing, then that's when you start to provide really really tailored experiences. And like, can we take that a step further and then like customize all of the course content based on what the user wants to see, in the tone that they like to be spoken to in the language they like to be spoken in, and like that's when things start to get exciting.
And I imagine you could even think about different learning modalities, right? Like we all learn best in different ways, and so could the agent sort of factor that sort of thing into account?
Yeah,
this has been really really interesting. The thing that jumps out to me like is really interesting to see like how intentional you and the team have been at looking at like real world usage patterns and feedback comments to validate a lot of like the decisions you're making here on how to incorporate in this case like AI features. But I think you're not just sort of like making an agent for the sake of saying like, oh, now we have like an agentic chat thing. Like it's actually backed by like real world usage data, feedback from users, and you're sort of looking at this to decide where to drive it from here. Like that I think is really impactful.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's important just to. I mean, everything I do, rightly or wrongly, is driven by data. Maybe I use data to back up my intuitions, but there's you can definitely see the users' pain points in real time. And what was frustrating 3 or 4 years ago was that you couldn't address these, but now you can. Now you can actually provide an experience that allows helps you to guide the user through. Because at the end of the day, like the goal for me isn't to have a X pass rate. My goal is to get people to a level of expertise and to have the same enjoyment of Neo4j as I had when I was starting out. I think that's the most important thing for me.
Oh, I like that. That's a good one. Cool. Well, that's a good sentiment to end on. I think we're a bit over time here, so maybe we will call it a day there. Thanks everyone for joining. Before we go though, Adam, is there any last things you want to mention? Ways for folks to follow up, get in contact with you. I dropped a link to the blog post you walked through in the chat, and just now I'll drop a link to Graph Academy in the chat. But yeah, anything else we want folks to know about before we drop here?
I would say that the 2 courses that we have coming out at the moment, depending on where you like to learn. So there's a course on Data Camp, which is the one that I've been working on for about 8 months, and it's just gone live, which makes me emotional. So yeah, there's that one, and also we have a course which has been released on deep learning, deeplearning.ai, on building knowledge graphs with agentic workflows. So it uses AD. So my colleague ABK is using ADK to take unstructured data and then turn it into a knowledge graph that can be queried by an LLM. And for me, that this is really exciting. I remember being at a conference, to AWS Summit in London, probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, and somebody came up to me and they said, "Okay, so how do we use this like Gen AI stuff to do anything?" And I just didn't get it. It was like, like surely you would know something about what you wanted to do, who you like the use case, and you must have some sort of idea of what you want to achieve. And I was like you can provide some instructions to the LLM, and you can get it to do what you want. You want to import in cars and parts, or your document contains legal data. Like, you should know that stuff. But what that course does is it uses it's a mixture of experts as a technique to first create a data model, critique the data model, and then write the import scripts. And it's not only on like unstructured data and documents, but also takes like CSV files and stuff like that as well. So that's a really really cool course. I had a preview of it at We Are Developers in Berlin last month, and it's really like this is what I didn't get, what I didn't understand could be done. Whenever the AWS Summit was. So that's really exciting. I'm really excited to see how people use it and how that evolves. Because in theory, if we can crack this problem, then you can start to create some really really complex data structures and then query them just on the fly without having to to have any real kind of domain expertise, so you could solve any problem in theory. So yeah, that's really exciting to me, and I'm excited to actually go through that myself over the next couple of days.
Cool. Yeah, I dropped a link to that in the chat. I'm now motivated myself to go through both of those, since knowing you spent 8 months on the data camp course and talking about the course from Andreas. That sounds pretty interesting. Cool. Good stuff. Lots of interesting things, I think, to think about and explore today. So thanks so much, Adam, for joining and walking us through this. Thanks everyone for joining today. And we will leave it there. So thanks a lot, and we will see you next time. Cheers. Bye-bye.